Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. This is the edited build video of the Windows XP Ultimate PC. This is a 30-minute edit of a 3-hour live stream that we did way back in December of 2019. While I appreciate all of you who watched the live streams, I realize not everybody has the patience to watch a 3-hour video, and so this is a cut down, edited 30-minute version of that showing just the key highlights. In just a minute, the camera is going to be overhead, and you're going to hear the original audio as cut during that live stream with all the fluff and chat interaction take out to make it a more watchable video. This PC is way overkill for Windows XP, to be completely blunt, hence the term Ultimate. If Ultimate was ever going to be applied to a configuration and use case, I think this pretty much would apply. Now, I'm not going to sit here and explain the whys and the purposes and the pros and cons of this because I did that in the previous video. You will find that linked down in the video description below, along with a full playlist of all the videos that we've done on this, and eventually the upcoming video when we actually install Windows XP on this, because I've done all the benchmarks on it, but those were all done in Windows 10. Overall, I'm very happy with this computer. It was a super premium PC for its day, and frankly, it's not a bad PC in 2020, all things considered. I debated installing Windows 7 on this computer rather than Windows XP. After all, given the hardware, 6 cores, 12 threads, 12 gigs of RAM, Windows 7 makes much more sense for a PC of this era. However, why? What exactly wants Windows 7 but won't run well on Windows 10? There's a few programs, but that list is exceedingly small. Thus, Windows XP Ultimate build as opposed to Windows 7 because we can build. I do plan in the future to make a typical Windows 98 retro PC that isn't quite as ridiculous and overkill as this. I'm also going to make a Windows 98 second edition retro gaming PC and a DOS retro gaming PC. Actually, DOS might require two because there's such a wide variety of hardware between the early 286 days with CGA and EGA graphics and the later 486 and Pentium days with Super VGA graphics. That might require two completely separate builds. Let me know in the comment section down below which you'd be interested in actually seeing first, the DOS, the Windows 98, or the typical Windows XP retro build. I'll be interested to see your thoughts. Now it's time to put the camera overhead and enjoy this awesome 30-minute build edit courtesy of our editor XD. Enjoy. Here you can see my original iBuyPower case, really a Thermaltake case, but provided by iBuyPower, opened up, and my original ASUS P6T motherboard, the original Intel stock cooler, back when they were actually decent, and of course the i7-920 is underneath it. We've got an upgraded power supply put in at some point, don't remember when. We are going to be keeping that. And I've already taken half of the RAM out. There was 12 gigs in here. We're going to leave 6 in. Otherwise, pretty much everything else is going, and we're going to move it over to another case. First things first, we need to unplug all the cables. This we're going to keep just, I guess, for nostalgia reasons. This is a USB 2 header that plugs into the motherboard and provides an extra 2 ports in the back of the system. I'll go ahead and remove the rest of the RAM to make it easier to get the power supply cable out. Very carefully trying to remove the main motherboard power cable. There we go. All the front panel connectors removed. And now with everything removed, we're just going to unscrew our motherboard. This is a standard ATX motherboard, so nothing really special here other than 9 screws to remove. And there we go. There is our original ASUS P16 motherboard, probably the most valuable component we have in this system now. These X58 motherboards actually are worth more than the CPUs are. Let's see what hard drive we have here. Barracuda 2 terabyte drive. We are probably not going to reuse that. Slide our SSD out and see what we have. This is a, oh, interesting. This is where my original 160 gigabyte SSD was. I thought this was in my Core 2 Quad. This is an Intel X25 G2 160 gigabyte SSD. Next, we're going to unscrew the power supply because this Corsair CX750 is a perfectly good power supply and there's no reason to not keep it. As I said, it's not original to this machine. I don't remember when I added it. Yes, this is why fully modular power supplies are wonderful. Look at this mess. I don't know, we'll see. We'll put it in the new case and maybe I'll keep it or maybe I'll switch it to a modular. We'll find out in a minute. One last look at the Armor Plus MX Thermaltake case. Before we actually install our motherboard into the case, let's go ahead and get the Intel stock cooler off and replace the CPU. 1/4 turn on these locks. And the stock cooler should come right off. Wow, that is some dried up thermal paste. Using our isopropyl running alcohol, we are cleaning off the old thermal paste. One of the safest places to do it is at least in the side at the moment. It's not going anywhere, but we'll have to clean it some more once we get it out. Well, there you have it, folks. 3 LGA 1366 CPUs, the original i7-920 with 4 cores, 8 threads sitting in the middle, which was a big leap ahead of its time. And then here we have the 6-core, 12-thread Xeon 3.06 gigahertz X5675. And then this would have been very expensive back in the day. The i7-980X unlocked 6-core. This was a 6-core chip before. 6-core chips were cool. And there's our socket, still in good condition. Hopefully this CPU works nice. I've not tested this. If we do all this and it doesn't work, I'm going to be kind of miffed. Close that up, lower our lever, and our i7-980X is installed. Cooler Master, Master Liquid 120, not light, not RGB, just straight up power. 2 fans, push and pull. So we have 4 screws. Those are for the fans, got it, okay. Individual mounting systems are going to obviously vary between coolers and boards, so I'm not going to try to explain it, but this motherboard is special because it's got 2 sets of mounting holes. I've pushed these all the way in. I actually think we're using the 775 mounting. We're actually using the inside holes, which probably won't matter. So let's see if this comes up cleanly through the board. Check that out. 1, 2, 3, 4 posts. We are using the inside, so the outside post, whatever, it is not remotely going to matter. That is pretty cool. That works really nicely. Do I need these? Yes. Those I need, those I need. Here you can see our new case, and this thing is beautiful. Much more modern design, much cleaner design than the old one for sure. I was originally going to use a different case, a white case, but for a variety of reasons I changed it out. And so we have switched, and we are now using this Gigabyte C200 glass, tempered glass case. Having verified that our posts are in the correct position, now we're going to insert our I/O shield, which we pulled out of the other case. Time to install our motherboard. I/O shield first. Once you've put all the screws in, it's a good idea to go around and just double check that you made them all tight. We usually do 2 passes on this, not making them super tight, until we ensure that all 9 are secure. I will be removing these 2 drive trays back here because I will not be using them, and they're in the way so that I can just have a place to stick some cables and do some easier cable management. If you're going to put drives here, you'd have to spend a little bit more time with cable management, routing everything with the power supply. But I'm going to take these out because that gives me a place to stuff cables. Here we have our Corsair CX750 power supply, non-modular, which I'll admit is a bit of a pain. The cables in my hand here are the ones we actually need for the build. I've separated them. And then the other ones, I'm just going to be stuffing back there and trying to keep them out of the way. With the case laid on the side, I have done a spider web of cables. We've got our Molex for our front fans. The cables I'm not using are stuffed down here. 24-pin ATX set aside for later. This is our CPU power cable, and it's actually the first one we're going to do. I'm going to run it up here, and the purpose for that is to get it plugged in, and then I can zip tie it using these to make sure it doesn't rest against the motherboard. With our 8-pin CPU power connector zip tied here, that is secure and not bothering anybody. Here you can see our 2 6+2 PCI Express power connectors. I'm actually going to run them through this hole right here because I'm going to put the SSD right here and run the wiring here, so leaving that free to plug into our video card. I have given a lot of thought to what to do with storage, and I ultimately decided to go with this Crucial MX500 1TB SSD as my sole storage solution. Taking one of the drive trays, I'm going to just screw it in here and mount it in the top. With our drive mounted, I will slide it into the top slot here and just screw it in. Stuff that in here. You can see here this black cable, well, barely, but this is the SATA data cable plugged into SATA port number 1 of the motherboard, and while it's not ideal, we'll end up tying it probably here and it'll be out of the way. I could tie it to that. We now have the 24-pin ATX cable plugged into the motherboard, and this is where having some aftermarket heavy-duty ties comes in handy, because these little teeny ones that come with the motherboard or the case may not be sufficient. I'm going to do something unorthodox here, and I'm going to tie the 24-pin ATX cable to the drive cage here. But the purpose of tying it off, and I've just set the tension just so it's not pulling on the motherboard, it's just sort of resting there, is just to keep it here. There's no tie downs over here, believe it or not, just these here, not a convenient spot. And I don't want to pull the cable over because I don't want to pull on the socket on the motherboard, risking breaking the board. There's a little bit of play in here, so that'll stay right there. Time to run the front panel HD audio and the reset switch, power switch, etc. to the bottom of the motherboard. This actually needs to get put through here because I will eventually use this. Okay. Our front panel audio connector and our front panel controls are plugged in here. I will save this for later when I get a PCI Express card that has a port for it so my front panels work. Now I'm going to take this off so we can install our fans. I have a 4-pack here of Cooler Master silent fans, 1200 RPM, very slow, 19 decibels. These things are basically silent. So I will put this up as high. With the 3 fans screwed in the front, I'm going to do my best to turn this up so that you can see it. There are the 3 intake fans plugged in. And so now I am going to put the front case back on. Well, that went on nicely. Putting the case sideways like this, you can see, well, I've got a couple of cables in the way here, but no big deal. Move those aside. We do have the 3 connectors here. Now, because I am doing an old motherboard, we are presented with a bit of a challenge. Now, thankfully, these are 3-pin connectors, and we've got a 3-pin fan connector right here, and we've got a 3-pin fan connector down here. We have a 4-pin CPU PWM power connector right here, and we have nothing else. This is old school, folks. This is before we had, oh, excuse me, we do have one more connector right here. The problem is that there aren't enough connectors on the motherboard to connect these, plus the top fan I'm going to install, plus the pump, plus the 2 fans on the liquid cooler. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the pump, 6 and 7 for the intake and exhaust fans here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are short 3 connectors on this board. Not to worry, I've got a solution. The first solution comes with the liquid cooler itself. This is a pair of connectors here that we'll use with the two fans on the radiator itself. And then this 4-pin connector will then plug into the CPU fan connector here on the board. The second solution is this 3-pin power splitter to Molex. I plugged in the Molex connector in the back, and we've got 3 front fans, and we'll plug those in here. The pump will plug into either here or here, and then the top fan will plug into this one over here because I don't have another splitter. Into that as well. Is this long enough to reach under there, through there, and up through there? It might be. Let's try that. Actually, that does. That reaches very nicely. Okay. Put that there. You know, after tying all this up and organizing it, I really hope that we don't have a problem, or I'm going to be grumpy. That down there. Most of the wiring in the back is now complete. I'll show you the fans on the other side in a second. These lovely ketchup and mustard colored cables are those, the adapters, a little bit of extra cable down here, but everything is now plugged in. The top fan and the top 2 fans here and the top fan are plugged into this adapter, and the bottom fan is plugged into the motherboard. Everything zip tied down. Time to get the liquid cooler installed. With the case flipped back over, you can see I've got a fan installed up here. These two and this fan are plugged into that 3-way adapter. The bottom fan, which you can barely see down here, it actually extends a bit into the drive area, is plugged into the bottom slot on the board. And then we'll be using the top 2 connectors for the pump and the fans. The next thing we have to do is we have to install, if we put it in the right orientation, the brackets for the pump. There are 2 of them, and we just screw them in through those holes. With those brackets installed, we'll just check the fit to make sure. Yep, that will go on very nicely. Now it's time to put the fans onto the radiator. This is officially the way to do it. I now have both fans screwed into the liquid cooler, and again, this is just an awesome. I have done a sandwich cooler like this in the past, and it was awful trying to get it installed. So, with the screw heads there, we just have to screw this into the case. I want those to be variable and CPU controlled. So one challenge is going to be cable management for this, which I don't want anywhere near any of this. Okay, so we now have, well, there's a problem. We've now got the pair of push-pull fans installed on the radiator and it's screwed into the case. I've got them plugged into the CPU fan mount here for both of these with the splitter wired around back. Went to a great deal of trouble to make all that nice. Who playing the home game can see what's wrong here? If I take this, the pump, and I try to place it on the CPU, Houston, we've got a problem. Yep, I am not making this up, folks. Unfortunately, here's the reality of it. The position of the CPU is different on different motherboards. Where the clean zone is, where it's mounted, left, right, up and down on an ATX board is not necessarily the same between all generations of CPUs, Intel versus AMD. In this case, the radiator and the two fans simply do not fit. And given the thickness, if I were to take this and turn it here, it's not going to fit either. So we have two choices at this point. Number one, I can ditch one of the fans, either the push or the pull, either one, and that would make enough room. My concern is that a 120 millimeter liquid cooler with a single fan will not be sufficient to get the kind of overclock that we're hoping for on this CPU. I can mount it here, which would potentially mean I could move this fan over as far as possible, mount the liquid cooler here, and maybe mount one more exhaust fan here. I'm gonna try that. We'll be back in a minute and see if that works. What I could do is switch to a 240 on the roof. I might actually be able to just loosen these and slide this because of the rails. Sweet. That's going to block the RAM. Yeah, CPU coolers are overrated. I'm going to fit over there. So if I turn it 90 degrees and go this way, that actually fits really nicely. Okay. That fits nearly perfectly. But now these fan cables are on the wrong side. That has to plug in. Man, I appreciate new motherboards so much more now. We now have the exhaust fan installed here in the front, and we have the dual push-pull liquid cooler here directly over the socket. It is a tight fit, but it does in fact fit. Now it is time to put the thermal paste on the CPU using a generous amount, but not a verge amount, because let's not be completely silly here. And then we are going to take the pump and very carefully line it up and then hold it down just like so. And then we are going to initially finger tighten the mounting screws on just to at least get something going. Stuff that under there and stuff that. As are buying a ton of them for cheap. We are almost done here. You can see some new colored zip ties back here. I've actually added another fan and I've rearranged the way they're plugged in. Now, I'm going to flip this over. We now have an exhaust fan here in the back, an exhaust fan here on the top, push-pull exhaust fans here on the cooler, pumps installed. The bottom fan is plugged into the bottom of the board here. The center front fan is plugged in through here, and only the top fan is connected to that three-way splitter I showed you earlier. These top three fans are now on the splitter. So I am making it work. I just have to make an adjustment. There we go. One more small change. I hate continuing to screw and unscrew these because every time you do it, you wear the screws out. Okay, that's nice. I have turned the computer 90 degrees around. You can see the top liquid cooler is here. It's actually now closer to the side of the case. And the reason for this, I'll show you. Credit to Gigabyte for doing this. There are 2 sets of rails here on the top on this side, but there are 3 sets over here. If you're installing a 280 millimeter liquid cooler or 2 140 millimeter fans, you have no choice. They will go on the outside slots and they'll just go together. There's no extra room. But with 120 millimeter fans, they give you an extra slot here. I had it screwed in here and it was almost blocking the RAM slots. So you can go 1 step further over. I didn't bother with this top exhaust fan because it's not in the way. But with this, by just going up 1 slot, this is just giving us so much more room next to those RAM slots. Here on the back of the case, you can see the final configuration. There's a couple of more zip ties added. I ran the pump power connector through here on the back. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, I suppose, but actually I think it's pretty well organized considering that none of this stuff is going to move anywhere. Nothing is going to bother anything. When we put the metal backing on this, this is actually pretty good, all things considered. The brave moment of truth. Are we going to stick all the RAM in here? I think we are. That's 12 gigs. We are not going to use... On Windows XP, the most we can use is 4 gigs. And so 12 gigabytes of RAM is utterly wasted. I could just put 3 of these modules in for 6, and we'd still have some wasted RAM, but whatever, it'd be fine. So that's 12 gigs of RAM. We'll put the 12 gigs of RAM in first, just to do our initial benchmarking. And, well, honestly, it's DDR3. What am I going to do with it? I'll probably leave it in there because there's no other place to put it. This is a USB dual header with a plug that's going to plug into the bottom of the motherboard, just giving us an extra 2 USB 2 ports in the back of the case. Well, I guess we're tearing every one of these off. We are going to install a Sound Blaster Audiology Sound Blaster A thingy number 2 ZS. Irony? I don't know if this works either. Almost everything in this build is untested. This is a USB 3.0 card. It's not the card I want to install, and I will be replacing this with a card that has 2 ports on the back, and it has a plug connector here for the front panel connector, so I can just plug that in here. But I don't have it at the moment. It'll take, I chose the no rush shipping option from Amazon to get an extra $1 credit, so it'll be here in a week, no rush. For the moment, I'm going to install this right down here. This is a Gigabyte case, so I figure it's appropriate that we put a Gigabyte video card in here. Now, this is not going to stay. This is a Gigabyte Aorus RTX 2080 Ti. This is a $1,200 video card. One of those rare times I'm glad we put a decent power supply in here. Our setup and install is now complete. The two 8-pin PCI Express power connectors are in. This sound card is actually in the way a bit. I'm probably going to take this out for the Windows 10 testing, and I will reinstall this sound card. I just wanted to show it. I will reinstall it when I do Windows XP stuff, but for Windows 10, I don't like it's blocking the airflow of the graphics card, and so I don't want to impede performance. I'll take that back out here in a minute, and it will go back in before we do anything with Windows XP. Thank you all so much for sticking around to the end of that and for watching this entire build video. 2 gold stars to all of you for sticking around, and a bonus gold star to XD, our awesome editor, for turning 3 hours of live stream into a coherent and watchable video. I think that is a much more enjoyable experience than meandering through an old live stream on the channel. Thank you very much for that. Like this video, you know what to do. Give it a like, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification icon, leave a comment down below so the YouTube algorithm bots know that you really like this video. Share it with your friends if you thought this was interesting, useful, informative, helpful, funny, entertaining, or just strange. Then share it with all of your friends, because sharing is caring and it is greatly appreciated. There'll be a bunch of links down in the video description below, as I mentioned before, links to the full playlist on this. Not really to the parts per se, because unless you're building a retro PC, it doesn't really make any sense. And if you're buying parts, this isn't what I would buy for a Windows XP machine anyway, so it's really irrelevant. But there will be some down there. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I will see all of you next time.